Hi there everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be doing some no-line Copic coloring, and we're using the new stamp set from Clearly Besotted. I've gone ahead and stamped my images in Memento Desert Sand onto my Copic Express It blending card. Now not only are we going to be doing some no-line coloring, but I'm going to show you how to add an underlaying color over the original color that you want to kind of change it. So this is a more realistic approach to coloring. As you can see, even up here, like the cat and the duck, they're not very bold, very bright. Now if I were to color the yellow straight, just show you, see, it's nowhere near as yellow as this, so it has more of that realistic look. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to color the little duck first, and the underlaying color to kind of mute the color that we are, the yellow, the Y21, I'm going to go ahead and use E42 and E41 to begin with. So we're going to color it just how it would regularly be colored, without, it's just not going to be yellow. So I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow here, and a little bit coming from behind the, I don't even know what they're called, I just call them the little wish blower thingies. And we're going to add a shadow here, come up the side of the face just a little bit. So also, anytime you're coloring with the no-line technique, you always want to make sure you're dragging out the color a little bit more along the border of your image, so that way it continues that line and it doesn't just stop, so you could see where it's, where the shape of the, whatever you're coloring. In this case, it's the little duck. So you can see here that there's little pieces of hair or fur or feathers coming out. So I'm just going to kind of like come up underneath of them. And again, since it is the no-line technique, you can't really tell, so you really can't go wrong with this. You can even add some extra ones if you'd like. So then I'm going to come around the bottom and around the foot. Now I'm not coloring on the foot, that's actually behind the foot, because that little foot is casting a shadow onto his body. And then right in the, between the arms where the hands are coming together, and a little bit along the top. So we'll go just like that. Then we're gonna go ahead and take the E41. We're gonna blend this out. Get a nice blend. And you probably hear my dog snoring beneath my feet. She snores like a full-grown man. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead now and do a heavy flick, just enough so that there's no more white. Even if you could still see that line, we're gonna add that other layer of the Y21, so we're just gonna, we just want everything to have a little bit of this E41 underneath. So then we're gonna take the Y21, and I'm gonna come out right where we added the E42. And maybe maybe do a heavy flick. Just a little bit. And then we're going to take the E41 again. And you don't want to go in the darker part where we added the E42. We're staying right along the edge of the E41 and that Y21. So we can mix these two together, and we're pulling them or pushing the Y21 across. Now, whenever you're coloring the no line, it always ends up kind of looking like a mess before you add the eyeballs. So, because you can't really see it sometimes. So you just gotta finish it. You gotta follow through. So then we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take my E43 and we're gonna darken those shadows a little bit. So I'm just gonna come down. So we're not going as thick as we did with the E42. So just adding a little bit of shadow, and this really helps with the no line as well. So that way you can see, you know, for example, the hand a little bit better. And maybe the, you know, the little definitions of the feathers coming out. Went a little bit dark right across the neck there, but that's okay. So now let's go ahead and zoom in a little more. Let's take the E42. And I'm just, a little bit of color really goes a long way here. You just add enough to blend out that E42. I'm sorry, the E43. And since I went really dark right in here, we're gonna go ahead and go a little darker over here. So anytime you go a little darker, or you have a blob or any type of mistake where you have to go darker in one area, as long as you add that balance and you add it to a couple more places, so here, 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 now it just looks like I just really intensified the shadow in those areas. So that way you don't have to, you don't feel like you have to start over, and you can keep your image that you're working so hard on. So now let's go ahead and take that Y21 again. And the the E41. We're just gonna drag out that Y21 a little. Make sure everything's nice and blended out. So you don't have to necessarily go over everything, but you just want to pull out just so everything kind of goes together. Now, if I didn't do this on my card, but if you wanted to, you could even add little flicks here and there just for some texture. You don't have to do it everywhere. You could just add it where the shadows are mostly, just to kind of break up the way that the shadow is. I'm gonna blend this out just a little bit more. All right, so now let's go ahead and finish his little beak and the feet so it starts to come together. So I'm going to take my YR12 and we're just gonna fill it all in. And then let's go back with E43 just to make those shadows a little bit darker. So if you're just starting your Copic collection, you can really get away with a good set of browns and grays and then a couple of colors, because you can always use these colors, your neutral, your browns and your grays, to deepen the shadow if you don't have a whole bunch, you know, if you don't have the darker orange. So that's why I always like to do this. I always try to use a lot of the same colors that I have, so I'm not using, you know, 100 markers on one thing, although I probably have done that before. So now we don't want that to be brown. We want it to be a darker version of this orange. So we're gonna go back over it. So I'm going back over that brown part a couple of times. And then again, just fill it all in. So go back and forth, dragging out that brown color, and then fill it in again. Just like that. Then I have a micron pen, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the eyes. And really brings it together once you do that. So you can tell by adding that underlayer, the undertone from the browns, how much it looks more realistic than just doing the Y21 straight across. So I'm gonna show you how I did the, I think they're called dandelions, my little wish blowers. So I'm going to take my C3, and we're gonna start in the middle, and I'm just gonna add a little flick right where all of these lines are. Now, it's okay if you're not coming out all the way, and it's okay if you do. So you're just, wherever your marker stops, that's where you stop, because we want it to be very thin, the line. Set that up there. Horrible lighting right now. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with these ones. Now you don't have to do every single one of them. That's another perk for doing the no line technique, because then you can't really see the lines that are actually there from the stamp. So if you miss a couple, it still looks good. And then we're gonna take C0, and I'm gonna extend those lines that we made, and I'm also gonna come out in between some of them. So we're pulling that color out, and then we're gonna pull it in. Like that. And then we're gonna take the E41, we're gonna add a little bit of some of this pearly white. So again, I'm gonna start with the outer part, just give a couple of flicks going in. And then a couple going out. Now before we add our dark shadow, right there, these are somewhat see-through. So we're gonna add the rest of his head right in here. So it looks like it's see-through and that you could see it on the other side. So then let's go ahead and take C4. And this is pretty dark, so you want to be very sparing when you do it. So I'm just going to go right in the center and add that little flick going out. Again, just try to stop wherever your marker stops. That way it stays thin. And we're gonna do the same thing here. We're not gonna go everywhere. because I think when you skip a little bit, that's what gives it that effect. So this is a good opportunity. Let's say you went a little bit dark with your, or a little bit thick with your C3, then you can go ahead and add a little bit of gray, even if it's kind of cluttered in one area and then it has a gap, and you move over here and add a couple more. And I'm going to go back and just add a couple more in between some of those lines. So then I'm going to take my C0 again, and I'm going to drag out that C4 just to pull it in. Just, it makes it fade and drags in that darker color, and it fades, kind of like when you're doing a pleat on a dress. And there we go. And we'll take the G21 and color the stem. Like so. So I'm not gonna color that again here. I'm just showing you. So I'm gonna color some of these leaves, and I'll go ahead and do this flower up here. So we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna add some of that E41 all over these leaves, all underneath, so that way it dulls it out. We'll just add all of this. And then we're going to take the G21 and we're going to just go one coat over. Again, you could see when I go one coat over, it's much more green up here. Down here it has more of a brown undertone. And it almost looks a little bit darker because we have more ink that's laid down. I want to show you something else. Let's take the Y21 and I'm going to add a little bit of Y21 on the tips of these, so you could see how it, well, then you could even do over the green, so the green's the undertone. So there's so many things that you can do with laying another color underneath. But now let's continue with that G21, so you can see the different color in reverse from that. You get a little bit more yellow that way. But you could still see it on the one with the yellow underneath. So it's always a preference. You can do whatever you want. Let's say you wanted to use the green first, so like how we did over here, even though we have that little bit of brown, but look how it looks when you add a little bit of brown, you know, towards the top. or in between, it kind of dirties it up a little bit. So if you were going to do that, you would, of course, we still need to do our darker shadows. So let's go ahead and take the G85. I'm going to come up. So this is also a really good time when you're doing the no line coloring, so that way you can see the different leaves. So we want to make sure that we give it each one the detail in between where they layer. So like right here, this is one, and then this is one underneath of it. So I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow underneath. And then just like how we did with the duck, you want to add those little flicks coming down so that way you can see the texture on the tips of the leaves. So then we need to blend it out with the G21. So you just come back through. Now we already have a couple of different layers down, so you should be able to just do a couple of flicks to pull the color out, and it should blend nicely into the color that you have laid down. Unless you're looking for a darker color where you needed to lay more color down, if that makes sense. So here we're gonna just pull that up. Also, when you're coloring or creating your own grass, laying down brown underneath before you start doing your grass blades, or even if you're just gonna color it flat, it gives it a better look, more like you have dirt underneath. So that's always a good tip as well. So I'm just gonna take my yellow because I like the way that looks, and just add a little bit of touch up here and there. Just like that. So there you have it. So the ducks are pretty much the same. I did do the grass because I didn't add any yellow down here. I did go back through and added some more of my own grass blades just to really finish it off, and added that hill using the E41 first, and then E42 right behind the grass to give it that shadow so it has that depth. So go ahead, and you could scroll down in the description, and I'll have a list of all my colors that I've used for each of the little stamps. And for the clouds, you can go ahead and read them in the description, or check out my blog post. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you. Have a great day.